¿Qué pasó? Oh, the countdown. Hello, 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 everyone. We are back. Welcome to another live stream Monday. My name is Francisco Cantu, and I am happy, I am excited, I am delighted to be here with you all on another live stream Monday. Just like we do every week, we have a very, very important topic today. The college application season is in full swing. As of right now, October 24th, there have been 24 days of the CSS profile and the FAFSA application open. Some of the early action deadlines that were due on October 16th have already passed. So we are officially in full swing college application season mode. And I am excited to hopefully provide some value for anyone who's watching this, anyone who tunes in every week for these free live stream presentations. As we get started, I am live right now on YouTube and Facebook. And as you can see, I have the ability of sharing the comments that I get on the screen. So throughout the presentation, any questions that you have, you can go ahead and ask them, and I will share them on the screen and I will answer those questions. For right now, just to give you an example of how that works and just to get us all set up for this live stream presentation, you can go ahead and tell me where you are watching from or whether you are a parent or a student. Why? Because number one, that's going to help me give out content or give out information that's specific to that state or region or that's specific to parent or students. And also it helps me familiarize myself with the audience and how I should be wording things. So if you can go ahead and use the chat to tell me where you are watching from. As you can see, I'm sharing right now David's comment that says hello on YouTube. And again, as you ask questions, if they are pertinent to what I'm talking about throughout the presentation, I will answer those questions right away. However, if you are asking something that's completely different, I'm going to wait until the end of the presentation to answer it in the Q&A session that always follows the end of these live stream presentations, all right? So I see that the comments section is starting to be populated. We are getting Jenna Dean saying, hello, mom of two high schoolers. Hi, Jenna Dean. I remember you from some of the previous live streams. I also know you are a mom of a golden retriever. I remember because I asked you about that profile picture. So it's nice to have you back here. We have a lot of good informational content that is going to be of use to you and your two high schoolers. Just a sneak preview of what we'll talk about today. Today's presentation is about the ACT exam. If you are watching us as a recurring listener or viewer, you know that last week we talked about the SAT. So there's an opportunity to learn about the other most popular admissions exam, which is the ACT exam. And we're going to talk about those differences. We're going to talk about the perks of one over the other. We're going to talk about anything you need to know about the ACT exam, when to take it, how to take it, tips, and all that good stuff. So keep those comments coming. This is just a sneak preview of what the presentation will look like. And another comment that I got is also from Jenna Dean saying that they're joining from New Jersey. That's wonderful. One of my closest friends is from Hoboken, New Jersey. So wonderful to have another person from New Jersey in the chat. So let's go ahead and take care of some housekeeping items that I want to share with you all before we started the presentation. The first housekeeping item is going ahead and sharing with you all the subscribe button, so that if you are watching on YouTube, you can subscribe and click the bell button so that you can get notified whenever we go on these live streams. So again, that's the button on the screen to go ahead and subscribe on YouTube and turn on those notifications so that whenever I do presentations like this, again, today we're talking about the ACT, but in a week we might be talking about essays, we might be talking about financial aid, we might be talking about extracurricular activities. So everything that we do, as you know from our recurring live streams that we do every week, we try to time every live stream so that it goes along with what is going on in the world of college admissions. So right now, with applications being due, there's a lot of questions about standardized testing. So that is why I think it is important for you to turn that notification on so that you can go ahead and not miss out on any topically relevant content that we will be sharing on these live streams. Next housekeeping item that I wanted to share with you all before the presentation starts is to go ahead and follow us on our different social media platforms. We have YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, and all of them are the same at Best College Aid USA. We added the USA because we also do all of these presentations for our Spanish audience. That is just at Best College Aid. However, if you want to see our content in different formats, I know that we are very popular on TikTok with the high school demographic, but then our Facebook and YouTube channels do better with the parents. So this right now, YouTube and Facebook, the reason why we live stream, we separate the Monday live streams in YouTube and Facebook, and then the Tuesday live streams on Instagram and TikTok, is so that we can sort of word everything in such a way that addresses the type of audience that we're talking to. So right now, as I saw from a comment from Jenna Dean, she's a mother of two high schoolers, so odds are that the majority of people watching this today are also parents. So that is why we separate them. And if you want to make sure that all the content that you're receiving is in the proper format for you as a parent or you as a student, then make sure to follow us across the board. Again, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. And that way you get our TikToks, our Instagram carousels, YouTube long video posts, and the Facebook live streams that we're doing right now. So go ahead and follow us across the board, again, at Best College Aid USA. And then the last housekeeping item I want to talk about before we get started on this presentation on the ACT is an invitation to go ahead and register for a free training on the 6 strategies to help your children get accepted to college with scholarships. That is a presentation that I wrote, I prepared, I recorded, and then David and Laura helped with the post-production, with the editing, with the posting, and all that good stuff. So it took us a while to get that set up for you all, but the reason why we have this presentation is because, as you know, these free live streams are topical, right? They are related to what's going on in the world of college admissions. So right now, what's going on in the world of college admissions? Well, early action applications, deadlines are passing as every week goes along. So a big component of that is standardized test scores. And that is why we're deciding to talk today about the ACT, last week about the SAT. However, throughout these live streams, we get a lot of questions about other topics that are not necessarily relevant to the month of the year that we are going through. So, sometimes in March, we might be talking about, I don't know, extracurricular activities, and people will be asking us about scholarships or about applications or about XYZ things. So, as a catch all presentation that addresses all of the different questions that we might get during these live streams, we don't want to just be like, oh, just watch our YouTube channel for a recording on that, topic or something like that. So, we made this training that is a catch-all that addresses all the different components of the process to go to college. Again, I recorded that, wrote that, and yeah, took care of that. It's fresh out of the oven. It's a presentation that was finished 2 weeks ago. David finished the editing and the posting, so go ahead and watch that if after this live stream you enjoy my teaching style, you want to learn more. And again, just to give you an idea of what that looks like, if you go ahead and let's see, how can I share my screen? Here we go. You can see my screen right now. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can just go ahead and this is the live stream that you are watching on YouTube. If you scroll down to the show more button, you're going to be able to see the link to register for that free training. So you can go ahead and click that and save my seat, and you'll go ahead to you'll be able to go ahead and register for this presentation, just putting your name and email, right? So I just wanted to show you that real quick. And that was the very last housekeeping item that I wanted to share with you all before we got started with this presentation on the ACT. Remember to ask questions. Remember to be active in the chat. David is monitoring the chat and might get to those questions before I do. But I did want to go ahead and take care of those housekeeping items before we got started with our presentation. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with this presentation. All right, let's see. So, what is the ACT exam, right? ACT exam, similar to last week when we were talking about the SAT, the ACT is also a multiple choice, one of the main standardized tests that colleges go ahead and consider whenever evaluating an applicant. And as opposed to the SAT, which last week we talked about that it's administered by the College Board, this one is administered by its own organization, the National ACT Organization. Another big difference between the SAT and ACT is that as opposed to the SAT, which we talked again about last week, the ACT has 4 sections, right? English, reading, math, and science. So why is that different than the SAT? Well, the SAT only has English, reading, and math, so no science. And again, we're going to elaborate a little bit more on these a little bit later as we go along with the presentation. However, for now, all that you have to know is that science section is a big difference, if not the biggest difference between the SAT and the ACT, okay? And another important thing that you should keep in mind about this science section is that a lot of people get intimidated by it because they say, oh, I'm not good at chemistry, I'm not good at biology, I'm not good at physics. And while that does help and it does build a good foundation, more often than not, students who demonstrate strong critical thinking skills excel at science, at the science section, more so than those who are just prodigies in chemistry or biology and whatnot. So that science section, although it is called science and it does have a lot of the foundation that gets taught in those science-based classes, it's more of a critical thinking type of session. All right, so we're going to talk more about this a little bit later, but I did want to make that important distinction between the two. And then the final aspect that I want to talk about in regards to the ACT is that it lasts 2 hours and 55 minutes, or between 2 hours and 55 minutes to 3 hours and 40 minutes. Another thing that I didn't cover that is important when I was talking about the sections is that there is an optional writing session. All right, so all those factors come into play when determining the duration of the ACT. But those are the main points or the main elements of this particular standardized test. Again, I'm going to elaborate more on these as I go along with this presentation, but do feel free to use the chat to ask any further questions or any questions related to this or any other topic as I go along, okay? Next, as we did with the SAT, I want to go over the breakdown of how this standardized test is graded. Why? Because if you know how it is graded, you can use that to your advantage. You can decide what your strategy is going to be. So last week, again, if you're curious about the logistics or the grading logistics for the SAT, you can go ahead and watch that live stream that we talked about last week. On the second slide, we talked about precisely how it's graded. So now let's move on to the ACT. For the ACT in particular, as I mentioned earlier, there are 4 sections, right? And as opposed to the SAT, sorry, what that was graded each section between 200 and 800, and then you added up those sections. This one is different in the sense of, or is different in a way that it is graded between a scale of 1 to 36, right? That is as low and as high as you can get. However, these different sections don't get added to one another. They get averaged between the four of them. Okay, so you're gonna have your reading, your English, your writing. Sorry, your reading, your writing, your math, and your science, and then you're gonna get a grade between 1 and 36 for the four of them, and then all those scores are going to be averaged out, and then that's how you're going to get your final score between 1 and 36. Okay, and then the optional essay, it is not part of this 1 to 36 score, right? It gets graded separately and evaluated separately to your final 1 to 36 score. And the final thing that I think it's pertinent, or it's important for us to think about, or for you to think about as we move along with this topic, and as you evaluate where you stand as opposed to other applicants, other college applicants, is the averages, right? So the average score for the ACT is a 19.8 in 2022, and then the average score in 2021 was 20.3. Okay, so as you can see in the last 2 years, the average scores went down by zero point 0.5, which some people may attribute to the way that, COVID-19 and remote learning has affected a student's learning abilities and test taking performance. However, this is just something that you should keep in mind as we go along and as we teach our members of Best College Aid. Your ACT or SAT scores are good or bad depending on where you are applying. Okay, so we always teach, or we always make sure our students know that although your ACT score might be competitive at one school, it might not be as competitive at another, and that is a big important step that a student needs to take when evaluating how each school, as we again have talked about endlessly in some of these live streams, how each school is going to be categorized into a reach, target, and safety school, and seeing how your score in particular stacks against the average score of students at that institution is what's going to determine the competitiveness of your application. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind, that you should go ahead and compare your score to those of the average student at your institution. And inside Best College Aid, we teach our students how to do that. And that is something that I very much want you to carry with you, or if you're a parent, to transmit to your student, that they should very much be aware of. They don't necessarily need to compare their average score or their score to the national average, or even to like what their friends are getting. They should compare it to the average of the schools in their list. Okay, that's going to be super important when deciding whether a school is going to be a reach, target, or safety school in your student's final list of colleges. Okay. All right, moving on to the next component of the presentation. Now that we know that how is it graded, let's talk about when a student should take this exam. And for the most part, we recommend a student take it for the first time the spring of their junior year or the fall of their senior year. Now, this is very important because a student, or the ACT, assesses a student, or ideally assesses a student's college readiness level. That is the whole point of standardized tests. However, a student who is very, very smart and very, very intelligent, who is only ninth grade or 10th grade, they have not, regardless of how intelligent they are or how well they perform at school, for the most part, based on the average high school curriculum in the United States, they may not have already covered all of the material that will be asked about in this examination. So whether it is basic components of pre-algebra, geometry, algebra 1, algebra 2, those there is a curriculum that dictates what topics or questions are fair game and which ones are not, because they are too advanced and a student may not cover that in high school. But for the most part, after 10th grade, during junior year, that is the time around which a student will have taken all of the courses that teach all the information on which they will be assessed on these standardized tests. So that is why the earliest we recommend a student take it is the spring of junior year, because if they take it too early, they might not have covered the topics that are going to be asked about in this examination. And also, this gives them plenty of time to reassess what their score is in all the different sections. And then based on that, which we will talk more extensively in a future slide, based on that, they can reevaluate what they should be studying between now and their next attempt. And that gives them plenty of time to have a strategy that allows them to apply, whether it's early or regular decision, under the most favorable conditions, based on what they studied and they having taken the exam more than once. Okay, so that is why we recommend our students to go ahead and take it for the first time the spring of their junior year and not wait beyond the fall of senior year, because by then it might be a little too late for a student to go ahead and submit it to the schools for which they will be applying to. And then if you don't submit your scores early enough, they might not be considered. Your evaluation will suffer. You might not get into a school. So it is good. It is great. I very much recommend that you plan with anticipation and with time. Okay. All right. Next up, and this is probably the most important slide of the whole presentation, how to increase your score. Okay, so you know how it's graded, you know when to take the exam. Now, let's say you took it and you're dissatisfied with the score that you received, or if you're a parent, your student is not satisfied with the score that they received. Well, the first step, or the first thing that I want to talk to you all about, especially the parents out there, this is the only tip that is going to be relevant to you, because the rest of them are going towards a student. But it is important to know that as a parent, you do not have to tutor your student. It is not necessarily your responsibility to sit down and teach them those concept of geometry, pre-algebra, grammatical rules and whatnot. I mean, if you can, sure, that's great. However, you are not the tutor, but it is a little bit of your responsibility to motivate your students to take these exams on time, to take these exams, and whenever they're studying and assessing where they did well or not did well, to study intelligently. Although you should not obviously be overbearing, there is a strong relationship between parents who are involved, in the sense of, okay, what's the timeline looking like? Have you taken these exams? Have you started evaluating what your time is going to be like with early applications, so that you can take it and submit those scores on time to those early action, early decision schools? As a parent, that's something you should very much consider doing, because you will be setting them up for success, rather than not mentioning anything just to not bother your student, and then all of a sudden they are a second semester senior who is applying regular decision but who never took exams. So a lot of schools that are, test mandatory are out of their list of possibilities because they never took that exam. All right. The next thing that I want to talk about as a strategy, and I've alluded to this earlier, but I will expand on it right now, that is to have a timeline and a test taking strategy. All right. So what I mean by a timeline, as I mentioned at the beginning of this live stream, a lot of the schools that have early action deadlines, the first batch of early action deadlines already passed. The first batch of early action deadlines was on October 15th. And there's a few universities that closed that first wave of applications on October 15th. And by then you should have already submitted your standardized testing scores, your transcripts, your essays, all of that jazz that makes up a college application. So if you are either a senior who is applying to other early action applications that might be in November, December, or you are a student in 11th grade or 10th grade, or you are the parent of a student in those earlier years of high school, it is in your best interest to go ahead and start working backwards. We're at Best College, we're big fans of reverse engineering, meaning that you start with your final list of colleges. So you start here, and then based on that final list of colleges, you work backwards and say, okay, what is the regular admissions deadline? Okay, that might be January 1st, January 15th, December something. Sure, let's write it down. But before that, what is do they offer early action or early decision? Yeah, they do. Okay, this one offers early action on November 1st. This one offers early decision on December 15th. And then all of a sudden, you work backwards and say, okay, what is the documentation or everything that I need to submit before then? Oh, they require standardized test scores. They require essays. They require rec letters. Okay, those should be done by the August testing date or September testing date, or the whatever 2 weeks prior, the recommendation letters. And then all of a sudden, if you keep on working backwards, you are going to know when you should take that first exam, because you will know, okay, well, I want to take my if I need to take my second attempt at the at the ACT on the spring of the fall of my senior year, that means that my first attempt should happen at the fall of my junior year, which means that I should start prepping 2 months from now. So by working backwards, you know where you're going to end up, but you reverse engineer a path towards that destination. All right. So that is what we recommend that you do. And by having that sort of timeline, you can develop a strategy, a studying strategy, in which if you are going to study for your first ACT starting this month and you take the first ACT, I don't know, 2 months from now, or, if you're a junior right now and you're going to take it in your second semester of junior year, you can build time into assessing, okay, well, I got a 35 in reading, a 34 in science, a 19 in math, and a 23 in science. Okay, boom. Based on that, I know that my reading and writing were great, so I'm gonna focus the summer on studying my math and science. Okay, so that builds the timeline and the strategy that you're gonna develop for that end goal, which takes me perfectly into the next step, which is to use prep materials. In case you are one of the Best College Aid members um, who watches these live streams, obviously these are open to the public, but we have some Best College Aid members who, on top of all the unlimited support that they have available to them and all of their one-on-one advising that we do with them, they also join these live streams. Well, in case you are one of those Best College Aid members, do know that your membership comes along with an a Kaplan ACT test prep plus account. So if you need to activate that, email me at francisco@bestcollegeaid.com and I'll go ahead and activate that for you, because that is a complimentary part of your Best College Aid membership. However, if you are not, I still encourage you to go ahead and use free official resources, whether it's old published tests by the ACT that got released, every year. SAT and ACT release previous versions of the exam that was open to the public. So you can use that to make your initial assessment and grade it and see where you did well, where you didn't do well, and study on those areas that you did not excel at. Also, there are Kaplan has, which is the official study partner of the ACT. It might not be the Test Prep Plus account that is included for our membership, but they do have some very nice resources that will help you study. So that's a great company. Again, there are old exams. Again, you can use, they have, if you have taken an exam, you can request a breakdown of your scores. Yeah, there's a lot of resources out there that you can use, and the more official they are. I know that for the SAT last week, we talked about Khan Academy, which is free and official. So that will help you for the SAT. But the point here is to know what you need to study, which brings me to the last piece of advice, which is to be intentional about what you study. Yes, it is important to go ahead and take practice exams. As a matter of fact, something that I very much preach to our students is to, if you have a practice exam, you printed some version of an old exam, and you are going to take it, I recommend that you go ahead and block out a period of 4 or 5 hours on your Saturday, and then you try to emulate testing conditions as much as you can, right? So you lock yourself in your room, maybe no breakfast, a granola bar, starting 9 a.m., and you set a timer, you put your phone, your watch, everything aside, and you take that exam with pen and paper, and at the end of the 4 hours, you go ahead and grade it, right? After you do that, it is not a matter of, oh, well, okay, I got a 29. Oh, I got a 26. Oh, I got a 25. It is a matter of breaking down each of the categories, seeing where you did well, seeing where you did not did well. And if that particular test that you're taking offers grading for subcategories, so it goes beyond just like math and it says, oh, this is how you did with math in the algebraic equations section of it, or like in the geometry section of it, you got 5 out of 5 questions right. You got 4 out of 5 questions right on, again, geometry, algebra, whatever it is, the subcategories, the type of questions that you did well at. The more specific you can get with what you need to study, the more intentional your studying will be, and the most efficient, bang for buck you're going to get for your hours of study. Okay. So that's it. Those were the 4 pieces of advice that I recommend for you to increase your score. Again, if you're a parent, motivate your student to not miss out on these dates, to be proactive about taking it on time. and be proactive about having a strategy. However, for the student, the piece of recommendation is to have a timeline of, based on the reverse engineering of where they want to end up, what college they want to end up at, work backwards to see what those deadlines are, and then based on those deadlines, assess when they should take the test by, and if they're going to take multiple attempts, when they should take the final attempt and the first attempt, and then the study period. So yeah, have a good timeline and strategy. Use official prep materials. So again, I talked about Kaplan. I talked about, for the SAT Khan Academy, I talked about using old tests. All these are great options. And then the final piece of advice was to be intentional about what you study, not just cramming stuff all the time, but rather using your previous attempts and a very specific breakdown of not just the writing section. Is it the conjugation section? Is it the punctuation section? Again, the more specific you can be with the breakdown of your performance, the more intentional you can be about your study, and the more efficient your hours of study will be. Okay. So that was that for the how to increase your scores. I did want to once again want to remind the Best College Aid members who are watching this that if you have any questions, you can ask me, but do know that your Best College Aid memberships includes free SAT prep resources, and as I said, a complimentary ACT Prep Plus account, which is five practice exams, as well as 1 year access to the study portal by Kaplan, and they're the official ACT study partner. So again, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and email me. And for everyone else, I do want to remind you right now, just because we get a lot of questions, and this is a great opportunity given that last week we did the live stream on the ACT, and right now this week we did it on the ACT. So last week was SAT, this week was ACT. So I want to take a second to talk about those differences in case you are watching this and you are uncertain of which one your student should take or which one you should take. This breakdown or this comparison might go ahead and inform that decision. Okay, so as I mentioned, ACT, 4 main sections that include English, math, reading, and science. Again, the science is a little bit more of critical thinking. And then it has an optional essay section. Okay, the SAT has reading, writing and language, and math. So pretty much those 3 sections are similar to the ACT, but the science is the biggest difference between the ACT and the SAT. If you're good at science and critical thinking, ACT might be better for you. All right. As far as duration, ACT 2 hours and 55 minutes without the essay. If you do the essay, is 3 hours and 40 minutes. SAT is 3 hours. And then moving on to the final comparison is that in the math section for the ACT, you can use a calculator in all the math questions, right? So it's more of a matter of knowing how to use it efficiently, not so much as to the mental math. However, the SAT is good if you are good at that mental math and you excel at those, mental calculations, addition, subtraction, all that good jazz, because it might give you a competitive advantage over people who might not be as great at those mental math problems as you are, and that'll give you a better fighting chance at that particular section to stand out. All right, so those are the main differences between the two, the SAT or the ACT. And then moving on, I did want to go ahead, and because this was a presentation on the ACT, I did want to go ahead and remind you of important deadlines that are coming up. All right, so what you should be looking at in this table is the regular deadline to register. Okay, so if you register, for example, the next one coming up will be the November 4th deadline, and that would be for the December 10th ACT. So that will be for all those students who want to go ahead and apply to school to have a one final exam chance or one final attempt for those schools that have a deadline after December 10th. So it might not include necessarily all of the early action or early decision deadlines, but for those regular decision applications, that December 10th ACT might be a good option for you. Okay, so that is the nearest one, and as you see, it runs all the way through the July one, which has a registration date of June. Okay, so if you need to take a screenshot of this, go ahead and take a screenshot of this. You can also find this information online, but I did want to take the chance to remind you all of this important coming up dates. All right, so now that we have covered everything in the presentation, it is now time to do some questions to answer some questions. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the chat. And again, if you have not made a question yet, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube, you can go ahead and use the chat feature. And I will be sharing, just like I shared David's question at the beginning or comment saying hello at the beginning, I will be sharing your questions and answering them for the rest of the people watching this presentation. So the first question that I see in the chat came from Jose Fernandez. Jose Fernandez asked, "What is a good ACT score that will stand out for college?" Sorry. What is a good ACT score that will stand out to colleges? Okay, so that's a great question. As I mentioned throughout the presentation, it all depends on the college that you're applying to. So while a school, to give you an example, a score of a 29 might be excellent for a school that has, I don't know, moderate to low acceptance rates, or schools that are competitive, then maybe if you're applying to a highly selected school that has a very, very low acceptance rate, that same 29 might not be as competitive or as strong of a score. So the better question is not necessarily which score will stand out to colleges, but rather which colleges will my score stand out for, right? So it's a matter of finding specific colleges that are in the ballpark area of where your scores are at. And then based on whether you're at, below, or above those scores, categorize them as reach, target, and safety schools. Okay, so every school is different, and as long as you always try for your best and get as highest of a score available, whether it's through super scoring, whether it's through repeated attempts and trying to get a higher grade on the later attempts, it is always a good idea to go ahead and maximize that score, and then based on that score, work backwards and see whether that school should be a reach, target, or safety school. Okay, excellent question, Jose. Next question from Linda Perez. Linda Perez asked, "My son is in 11th grade. When should he take the SAT?" So for the most part, what we recommend, just based on all of the classes that a student will take, which cover the materials that will be included or asked about in the SAT or ACT, a great starting point would be in the spring of their junior year. Take that first attempt, then they can assess their performance. Again, see how they perform on the reading, on the writing, on the math, if they take the ACT on the science section. But not just that, if you can get more granular and see how they did on the subcategories, so whether it be geometry or pre-algebra, for the English section, it could include the punctuation, it could include the grammar. Seeing how you perform at each of these subcategories could inform what you will study over the summer, so that maybe they can take it again on the fall of their senior year. And by then they'll have a couple of attempts under their belt and their grade will be as high as possible. Okay, so that's kind of the timeline of what your students should be looking at for those first SAT attempts. Okay, excellent question. Next question is from Jackson Santoro. Jackson Santoro is asking, "What's the Bright Future Scholarship? How can my kid get it?" Excellent question. So Bright Future is a type of state-sponsored scholarship. Now, every state has their own sort of state-sponsored scholarship, whether it would be the Cal Grant, the New York Tuition Assistance Program, and it is a merit-based scholarship which assesses, between other factors, a student's GPA, SAT, ACT, standardized test scores, and their standing, right, in their high school. And then based on that, they can go ahead, and if the student performs above a certain standard in those thresholds that they look at, again, GPA, SAT scores, if a student excels or exceeds those thresholds, then they will qualify for those merit-based scholarships. So Bright Future specifically is the state-sponsored scholarship for the state of Florida, for which, if you go to their official website, you'll be able to see what those specific requirements are. But the overall general answer is it's a state-sponsored scholarship that your student must exceed the qualifications of SAT, ACT, GPA in order to go ahead and qualify to receive that scholarship. Okay, great question. And if you're in a different state, you can go ahead and research what your specific state's state-sponsored scholarships are. Okay, but great question. Bella Friedman. Bella Friedman, I am a sophomore and my grades for the sorry, the question's a little small. Okay, so I'm a sophomore and my grades for the past couple of years were not as high. Do you think I can still get into a good college? Excellent question, Bella. So, when a college admissions committee or the people evaluating your college application take a look at your picture as a student, as your profile. Whenever they take a look at your profile, they'll be able to see everything that you submit in that application. So they'll read your essays, they'll look at your transcripts, they look at your recommendation letters, they will look at your extracurriculars, and then they will assess every single component of it, giving it a score. So if you are currently struggling with your grades or you have struggled with your grades up until sophomore year of high school, do know that your application will be a holistic compilation of all the different components of that application. So right now, even if you had bad grades on your freshman year, because your students will be your admissions officers will be able to see your transcripts, they're going to get a holistic picture of the entire journey. So they'll be able to see your freshman year grades, sophomore year grades, junior and senior year grades. So if you show some sort of progress, not only will this help the final GPA with which you apply to college, because naturally, as you perform better, your GPA will go up, sort of bearing back or minimizing the impact of those bad first few set of grades. For this, you can also see if you can take AP classes on the subjects that you excel at, because they will be weighted differently and they'll have more of an impact at minimizing the bad grades you already received. And you can also apply to schools or look for schools that maybe don't necessarily weight a student's academic performance in terms of GPA as highly as they weight other factors like standardized test scores, extracurricular activities, or the progress of a GPA. So there's many different factors that will impact whether or not you are accepted to college. But even if you had a bad freshman year of high school in regards to your grades, that should not determine whether or not you go to college. You can definitely get to college. There are a lot of things that you can do, as I outlined a few of them here. Again, getting your grades up, again, taking advanced level courses that will help increase your weighted GPA and minimize the effect of the bad grades that you have had. AP classes, extracurricular activities, um, volunteer hours, your essays. Yeah, all of those things will help get you into a good college. So you have a lot of time and you can very much turn it around. So I would not worry, Bella. Okay. And then the final question again, if you have any more questions, you can go ahead and ask them in the chat. But the last question that I will be answering today, unless I get more questions in the chat, is the following question from Chris Murphy. Now, Chris is asking, how do you feel about going to community college and then transferring? That's a great question. How do I feel about it? I feel as though it is, and it can be the best course of action for some students depending on their situation. I do believe that the process of transferring schools can very much be the right course of action for a student depending on their current situation. There are a lot of factors that will determine whether or not transferring is good for you. But in most cases, if you're transferring to a school that offers the academic opportunities that you're pursuing, that accepts the credits that you have earned at that community college, that makes sense in regards of your professional aspirations, it is perhaps a more renowned school with a higher networking opportunity in the field that you want to pursue as a career, and it can enable you to get a job. In most cases, it is a win-win for everyone involved. So, and also as far as how do I feel about it in terms of is it possible? Yes, it's very much possible. It's very much doable. The process is fairly similar to that of applying to college for the first time. You would start with making a list of colleges, 8 to 12 universities, reach target safety schools. You would take factors into consideration such as what you want to study, what you're aspiring out of a lifestyle in college, the region, um, the atmosphere that you want to live. And then based on all those qualifications, come up with a list of reach target and safety schools. And then based on that list of reach target and safety schools, you will work backwards to see what requirements you need to submit. and when you need to submit them by, and make sure that everything is submitted on time, whether those are transcripts, letters of recommendation, and any other sort of standardized test score that you might have to submit. After that, you go ahead and you go through the application process, submitting the application, waiting for those deadlines, looking for scholarships, funding to make sure that the transfer is an affordable one. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, you are attending a different, maybe a 4-year institution after your years spent at community college. So I think it's a very doable process. And I think for most people who are serious about doing it, because of the betterment of their professional potential, it is just the right decision for them to do so. Excellent question. I'm glad I got to share my thoughts on that with you all. So unless you have any more questions, I think that covers all of the ones that I had been asked in the chat. Last thing I want to do before I end the live stream for today is I did want to go ahead and take the opportunity to invite you once more to the free presentation that we have on the 6 strategies to help your children get accepted to college with scholarships. I know it says your children, but if you're a student yourself, you can employ these strategies yourself. You don't need to be a parent to watch this presentation. You don't even need to be the parent of the student. You could be an aunt, an uncle, a guardian, a grandparent. I wrote that presentation narrowing down the most common pitfalls, mistakes that people make, and I outlined how to avoid them, what are the tangible, concrete, actionable steps that people can take to make sure that they're set up for success on the road to college. Again, it's completely free. Just as a disclaimer, or in the spirit of full transparency, there is an offer at the end of the presentation to join the Best College Aid program. That offer is completely independent on the fact that we'll continue to do this live stream presentations every week. I will continue to tune in and prepare these live streams for you all because I want to help as many people as possible. However, these live streams are seasonal and these live streams are topical. These live streams are about things that are going on around the world of college admissions today. So even though I talked about SAT or ACTs this week and last week, maybe you're wondering about scholarships or about increasing odds of acceptance through extracurriculars or GPAs or what classes to take. Well, as a catch-all for all those topics, we made this free training. And then again, if after having watched this live stream, maybe you thought that I explained things properly, despite sometimes stumbling in words, I speak too fast and sometimes I forget to enunciate. But if you can get over that and past that, and you see value in these live streams, in the free training, if you watch it, if after that you find it valuable or you want to learn more, there is an offer at the end for the full Best College Aid program, which pretty much breaks down every single step of the process as early as middle school and as late as a student is already graduating college. You know, things from what classes to take when a student's starting middle school, all the way through the application process in high school. And then in college, we have sections for life in college, budgeting, building your credit, finding a job out of college. So it is a very extensive program. And I would very much love it if you all would take a chance to look at that and evaluate that and see for yourself if that's something you'd be interested in. But again, no matter what, the presentation is free, no strings attached. Worst case scenario, you get a free training out of it. And regardless of whether or not you register for that free training, which again, I very much recommend that you do because there's a lot of value in there and it's free. Regardless of that, I will continue to come back here and do these weekly live stream presentations as a way to give back to the community, as a way to help people or parents who are out here who might not necessarily know what the process looks like because they've never went through it, or because they went through it decades ago and it's completely different now. Whatever the case might be for you to be here, I am very blessed to have the opportunity to share this space and this time with you all. Thank you for being patient with me through technical difficulties and for asking all of your great questions. I'm definitely going to be here tomorrow, actually, just a reminder. Tomorrow, I have the Instagram and TikTok live stream. So if you do not follow us on those platforms, you can go ahead and follow us there at Best College Aid USA. And if you do not want to watch that live stream tomorrow on Instagram and TikTok, I'll see you right back here again next week on Monday at 3 p.m. on YouTube and Facebook. But that is what the timeline looks like. Those are what the presentations that are coming up will be streamed on. So again, I will see you all back here on Monday at 3 p.m. or tomorrow on Instagram and TikTok. It has been an absolute pleasure to spend this time with you all. Thank you so much for your questions, for being attentive, and for allowing me to share this hour with you all. I hope you have a blessed rest of your week, and I will see you all next week.